What's up, Hoof listeners? Welcome to the Hoof Podcast as we get you ready for the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. And I know I say it every single week. Can't believe we're here, but really, the divisional round of the playoffs is my favorite time. Right? This is the best football you get. The final 8 teams laying it all on the line. I think some of the best games in NFL history have been in the divisional round. Right? Like the Baltimore Broncos game back in the day with the Jacoby Jones returns the kickoff, right? It was a wild game. 13 seconds between the Bills and the Chiefs, right? Phenomenal football game. And the list is endless, but it seems like there's a lot. This is the best week of football you get. There's rare exceptions. Like we've had great Super Bowls, great championship games. But I think if you go back and look, like the best football is divisional round, right?
Well, yeah, and you also still have a semi-full slate, right? Obviously, as the playoffs go, you're dwindling teams, you're dwindling games. There's less to choose from. Having 4 games this weekend versus only 2 in the next week, and obviously 1 Super Bowl, that narrows down your options of getting a good game too. And these are the best of the best teams, so you expect them to go toe to toe and competing at the highest level, which ultimately comes out this weekend. And yeah, it's the biggest. I think the bigger disappointment is losing now versus losing later, right? You lose in this round, you feel like a failure. You lose later on in the AFC Championship or NFC Championship or Super Bowl, you at least feel, I don't know, a little better about it. So it's
right.
Harder as football.
Was it a successful season? Like,
correct. Yeah.
Being a Bills fan, I can tell you the championship game getting there was pretty surreal, right?
It was
pretty
awesome.
Good. But losing every year in the divisional round sucks because you have to wait so long to like regroup and get that feeling back. And this is just like the Bills lost to Cincinnati. There was a lot of hype around that game. You finally get Cincinnati at home. It was like there's so much hype around that game, and everyone thought the Bills had the advantage, right? But no, they came out flat. Cincinnati had their number once again, and it took a full year to get back to here to kind of redeem that loss, it feels like, right? We have a chance to redeem that. Also getting Kansas City and Buffalo, you can redeem from, was it 2 years ago, the 13 seconds game, right? So all of that really feels like it has a chance to go away. Some of that hurt has a chance to go away this week.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's another reason why.
Storylines for all these teams, too. Yeah. Yeah. You could say a lot about these matchups this weekend that are going to be fun and exciting to watch, to see who keeps their momentum going and who doesn't. Either way, 4 teams are going home disappointed. And it's a tough pill to swallow when you've made it this far. But yeah, we will get into each of the games because there's a storyline everywhere this weekend and a lot of good football to be had. And the weird start times, right? The game time. That's the only thing I don't like. It's like my mind knows football on Sunday is 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8:30. I know when the games are, but now it's like, what, 3, what, 6:30? Wait a minute. What?
It's circadian rhythm. Yes.
It's totally off. But, with only 4 games, they've got a lot of leeway to play with. So they split it up a little bit on us. But
right.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like the NFL's been messing up our football rhythm, our circadian rhythm all year, right? Black Friday game.
Yeah.
Wild card weekends now, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Especially for us Bills fans, right? We had a stretch of games that were, I think, what was it, 6 in a row that were not at 1 p.m. when the majority of our games over our lifetime
the new time slot, right?
Yeah.
That's weird. It's just weird.
Yeah. It was definitely an interesting season compilation there for a while, but yeah, we'll adjust pretty easily to that with these, dynamic matchups being the center of everybody's attention now because they're the only games on once again in their time slots. So, hopefully it's better football. I don't want to say better. Last week was okay, but it wasn't overly entertaining.
Blowouts.
Let's put it that way, right? It was not fun and exciting football at all times. It was more like, okay, this one's over, and I guess we'll see what happens the rest of the way. Yeah.
Because occasionally you do get a wild card weekend is usually, pretty competitive. Comes down to one score. I think the Rams-Lions game was the best example. Like usually the games are more like that. But all the home teams won except for one, and most of them were blowouts except for one. One game, right? So, yeah, pretty wild. But let's touch base on the coaching carousel, right? A lot of rumors, news, things flying around. Where do you want to start? Mike McCarthy returning to Dallas.
Yeah, that was the shocker. Yeah,
pretty surprising. But I think it's personally the right move, right? You can't just keep restarting all the time because it takes 2 years maybe to get in the groove, learn the new system, be fluent in the system, right? Where you're not thinking, you're just doing in the football team. So resetting to me for Dallas just seems like a mistake. So I think this is the right move with Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I think most people are just surprised knowing that Jerry Jones is not somebody who usually likes to keep people around after repeated failures. I think that was the main thing of, you look at Mike McCarthy, the coach, 12 plus wins with this Dallas team, 3 years in a row now? I mean, you can't do much better than that as an NFL head coach. So the bar has been set there, but when you continually lose in the postseason, that and there's a different standard, being Dallas, that makes it harder. But I think it was the right move for them to keep him. But if they don't go over this hump, I mean, again, next year, he's definitely going to be fired, no matter how good of a coach he is. That's something you have to prove, right? You've got to be able to win playoff games. You can't just make the playoffs.
Right. Well, I think there's great coaches who can get you multiple Super Bowls, right? That's a rare few who can go to multiple Super Bowls, know how to build a team, have enough NFL experience to kind of out-coach most teams, right? In big moments, right? I'd say it's like Andy Reid, Belichick, maybe one more if you want to find a name. But the next group is who can be a consistent winner and give you an opportunity every year to have a Super Bowl, right? And I feel like right now that's, I'd say Sean McDermott. You're in the mix, even though we haven't seen him get over the hump. You're in the mix every single year, right? I think Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan get a lot of credit in that. The next tier of coaching, right? Jim, not Jim, but John Harbaugh is in that conversation, right? These guys are always tapping on the door to get you to a Super Bowl. But then there's the other side of that is the playoff coach who just gets in and can't win in the playoffs, right? That'd be the next tier down. We get to the playoffs, but you can never win.
What's his in Cincinnati?
Mike Tomlin comes to mind, right?
Mike Tomlin the last few years, but at least he has a Super Bowl
Zach
under
Taylor's
his belt.
been to a Super Bowl, right, for Cincinnati.
No, I'm talking about their old coach. What's his name?
Marvin Lewis.
Marvin Lewis, yes, who made every year he made the playoffs, but never won a playoff game. So they just couldn't get it done, and eventually they had to fire him and move on, which was the right move.
I mentioned Sean McDermott and tapping on the door, but also he could be in this tier as well, right? Super Bowl, or playoffs 5 years in a row. You lose every year.
Yeah, but at least he has a consistent winning record in the playoffs. He wins games.
Wins playoff games. Okay.
Yeah, it's not like he's losing and getting bounced out even after getting there. Or like a team that limps in and then loses. That's not where you want to be. McDermott has definitely, there were expectations that weren't met with his teams. There were mistakes made with his coaching, but I would still say that, he is respected in the playoffs. It's not like he's one of the guys you're like, oh my God, what is his team going to do? No, his team's going to be ready. It's just a matter of what's going on and will he be out coached by somebody better, like an Andy Reid, for example.
I know like Mike McDaniel's pretty new, right? He gets a break. He's only been the coach for 2 years, but so far what we've seen is they can't win.
0-2. Yeah, bad.
Maybe in that conversation, but Mike McCarthy, where do you put him, right? Because he's won a Super Bowl with Green Bay.
Yeah.
I mean, he won the division this year, gets credit for that, but Dallas just is, I don't know if it's coaching, because now we've had multiple coaches get Dallas to the playoffs and lose, right?
Yeah, right. So what's the problem really, right?
What is the problem really is the conversation. I don't think it's Mike McCarthy personally.
No, I don't either. But it does ultimately fall on the head coach. If he doesn't win playoff games next year, I think he's fired without a doubt.
You start looking at quarterback, right? Is that the problem?
Well, yeah, I think
is it general manager?
Could be a problem, right? But I don't know that they're moving on from Dak anytime soon. I know a lot of Dallas fans who aren't happy with Dak's inconsistent play. Now, this year was a better year for him and in the MVP conversation and,
sure.
Putting up the stats a little better. But
great regular season
consistency is what you want to see, and especially at quarterback, and maybe a bad game here or there. And that's just not what the case has been with Dak. He's been very inconsistent and stretches of good, stretches of bad. And that's ultimately why they find themselves where they are. I mean, he put up the stats, quote unquote, against Green Bay last week, but it was only because it was a garbage time. I mean, they had a 27-point lead, so they couldn't let him do it.
Outside looking in on Dallas, it seems like I think they're a little small on defense, and that shows, right? They have a hard time stopping the run. The linebackers don't seem to step up and stop the run. Defensive line, they get a lot of pressure on the quarterback, but again, have problems against the run. Also, outside of CeeDee Lamb, outside of Tony Pollard, who do you turn to? It feels like they're kind of missing that solid X receiver. I mean, I know they had Brandon Cooks make some plays for them. Gallup usually makes some plays for them, but I mean, I feel like they're missing pieces on offense, right? It was always CeeDee Lamb, was always a game plan. When that's shut down, it's okay, well, tight end here, tight end there. But you're just missing that other piece, it seems like. So I think we could have a good argument to say it's personnel problems in Dallas and not coaching, right?
Sure. Agreed.
Bill Belichick to Atlanta. Josiah Anderson tweeted that's pretty much it's locked up after the second interview they had, just barring his signature.
That's interesting.
Atlanta Falcons coach.
That's definitely an interesting one indeed. I know I badmouthed Belichick last week and said, if you're a franchise in today's NFL, I don't have an argument for hiring Belichick, and I would still understand. I mean, I get the hype and you want to bring in his name and his clout, but in Atlanta, the problem is what? Mainly quarterback, right? I mean,
that's it probably, right?
Maybe, but I don't understand why Belichick is going to be the guy, and exactly what I talked about last week too. You don't want him to have to figure out quarterback. You want to have an established quarterback and then bring him in as a defense guy, right? So they must have a plan, right? They met twice. He laid something out for quarterback position moving forward, and they apparently liked it. And they're courting him. They want him. We'll see how it works out if they end up signing on the dotted line, or if Belichick's just using this as a launching pad to try and get another interviewer position. But when Belichick goes on the market, I mean, he knows what teams are already yes or no on
it's an easy sell, right?
Maybe it's one of his only options, and he's made it work out. And again, if I'm the Atlanta front office or whatever, as much as Belichick is the name, I just don't understand why you want to put your organization in the hands of Bill Belichick.
Well, two things come to mind for me. If I'm the owner of the Falcons, who ultimately makes the decision, you're going to sell a lot of tickets.
That's
because,
true.
There's a lot of hope all of a sudden. We have a 6-time Super Bowl winning coach who's been called the greatest coach of all time for 20, long time now, 10 years, right?
That's a good point, especially after a disappointing season, right? You'd expect season ticket sales or whatever going to go down.
They're back.
You bring in Bill Belichick automatically, it's up. Yeah.
Fans are pissed that they went from this quarterback to that quarterback on a game-to-game basis. That was dumb. Okay, we got rid of that guy. Now you have a great coach. Okay, I'm back, right? I'm back engaging content. I'm buying T-shirts. So anyway, the other one is culture, right? There was a rumor, I think it was week 18 or leading up to week 18, that there's a bad culture in Atlanta. And why would you hire Belichick? Well, he fixes the culture instantly, right? Because he's a disciplinarian. There's so much respect around. I mean, you've seen Patriots players in the locker room, looking at Belichick, they talk to him different, right? It's sir, it's respect, it's a handshake, it's a different demeanor.
Sure, but that's not the right thing for every player either. So maybe some guys on that roster currently are going to be like, well, and Belichick himself is going to be like, well, these aren't the players for me. And the players are going to say, well, this isn't the coach for me. It's time to move on. And if you're Atlanta and you have a pretty decent roster that you've been working on over the years, and you have felt like it's quarterback and coach that were the main problems, and you can fix that, you want to maintain that continuity and build off of it and push it forward, not have to reshape it around the coach who has a certain image and likeness. So you hope that clicks between the leaders on that team now who are going to continue to be on the team and the new coach you hired. But if it isn't, then you're going to have a setback before a push forward in my mind. Right. And
okay.
You don't want that.
Right. So that's from the team's perspective. From Bill's perspective, you go into an NFC who's far less talented than the AFC.
Right? Smart move.
You look at this Atlanta roster, there's a lot to like on both sides of the ball. You're a piece or two away from being a really balanced football team, right?
Pretty winnable division, right?
Very winnable
Obviously,
division.
Very winnable division.
For sure. And these teams, they don't play Belichick that much. So, I mean, that the schemes are back, right? Like, you're playing the Saints twice a year. They haven't. When's the last time they played the Patriots? Probably been a while, right? So there's some of that too. A fresh scheme, right? Which a Bill would know. And also, like, he's going to look damn good in black. So let's get real. He's about name and likeness. I mean,
a black cutoff
evil Bill Belichick now wearing black. That is going to be. That is. That fits the image. Right? Imagine the black hoodie on, though. That's some scary shit.
That's right. The black hoodie. Yeah. He's going to have the hood up. He's really going to look like Darth Vader or the
exactly.
The Emperor. And
yeah. Emperor Belichick. I get it. You know, he wants that black. I understand. Plus, it's going to break the coaching win record. I'm not sure if Belichick's trying to win a Super Bowl or anytime soon, but seems like he's sticking around for the all-time coaching win record.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there.
And this is at least a multi-year deal for him, right? So 2 to 3 years minimum, right? And then if not more on the contract itself, at least.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like he'll be doing personnel stuff either. So half his job's gone.
That's huge.
Free time, right?
And I said that was one of my points against hiring him is he wants to be involved. And I'm sure he will have feedback, right? You don't bring in a Bill Belichick and not let him have feedback on his roster. But he's not the GM. He's not the guy in charge of roster making. And I think maybe he's learned from that mistake and he wants to go somewhere where it's like, okay, take my input as serious as you can, but he's the one doing the day-to-day job of that.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be hard to work with him, I feel like. If you're Bill, we want this guy. We want this quarterback in the draft. Bill don't like him. What are you going to do? Draft him anyway? Hell no. It's Bill Belichick. You're gonna listen to him.
Exactly.
He's going to manipulate you.
So that's why he still has power, even though he doesn't have
exactly. Power. All right, last one on here: the LA Chargers interviewing Mike Vrabel. Thought that was kind of we've heard all the Jim Harbaugh rumors, but Mike Vrabel in town. What do you think about that? I mean, is Jim Harbaugh still weighing his options? Doesn't.
It's Harbaugh is pretty smart as a coach. He knows he's leveraging both, right? So he's leveraging Michigan to say, okay, what's your best offer? Well, do I want to stay? I've already won the championship. I could go back to the NFL.
The blank check, right?
Yeah. Check. So if the offer is ridiculous from Michigan, I'm sure he'll stay at Michigan. But if the opportunity is right for him to go to the NFL, then he's going to do it. So he's using them against each other, which is what he should do naturally to get the best offer and the best job for himself. But I like the idea. I mean, obviously, the Chargers with the established franchise quarterback is an ideal place for any coach to go if you're already established, right? If you want to build your own thing and you're a new coach, maybe not. But a guy like Vrabel, I think would be a great fit for the Chargers. Maybe he could figure that defense out for them, and finally get something out of the players that have been there and rebuild it in a way that works because it hasn't worked there. And the offense just let it do its thing, right? And then if they go in the direction of like a Jim Harbaugh, then they would have to figure it out, right? Like, okay, is he building his own offense, defense, special teams, his way? Are we going to have a year of, okay, we got to let these contracts expire, cut a few guys, get that dead caps year, get used to the franchise quarterback, see how this relationship goes? I think you could give him a year benefit of the doubt in that situation. And then they could be super competitive come 2 years from now, right? So I think Jim Harbaugh is another name that makes sense. But I like the Vrabel idea for the Chargers if it ends up,
well, another defensive head coach, just what they needed, right?
That's why I tend to think that they are not going to go that direction, actually, because it didn't work out for them.
It's starting to feel like Mike Vrabel could end up being locked out here a little bit, right? Like, we all thought he was going to New England. That job seals up, right? Looks like the Raiders are out of the picture. Looks like Antonio Pierce might be the guy there, right? Belichick to Atlanta. What's left if he doesn't get this LA job? What's left? The Commanders, Panthers. running out of options pretty quick where it's starting to look like, oh, Tennessee's a good option, right? Where you just came from. You know
yeah, right. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, because that is an interesting turn of events now that you mention it, that if he doesn't get the Chargers job, where would he go next? I think he'll get a job somewhere, somehow. So I'm not too worried about it. He didn't even end on a bad note necessarily. They didn't make the playoffs, but they played strong. They exceeded expectations at times, and he's got an established track record as well. So I'd be surprised if Vrabel doesn't get another head coaching job this year. Yeah, but the next best match we'll have to see. Belichick to Atlanta was somewhat surprising. Commanders I could see certainly, because I think as that organization needs to keep its head on and figure things out step by step, Vrabel I think would be a good guy to have in that position. You want somebody who's established. You could bring in somebody young and try and start from scratch, but if that doesn't work out, you're left going backwards. Whereas if you bring in somebody who's established, you will at minimum have something to build off, right? Especially with the new ownership and everything going in that direction.
Right. And I think if you're a team, you look at Vrabel and be like, I think that guy could recruit Derrick Henry here.
That's true too. Yeah.
Could be a package.
Not a bad option. Not a bad option.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll keep an eye on that. That's definitely the coaching carousel is always fun to follow. But yeah, looking like there's things starting to happen. So the opportunities start to dwindle very fast. There's only a couple of these jobs, right? Let's get into the games here. First one up, Houston at Baltimore. Houston plus 9.5 going into Baltimore. Both these teams are hot, right? I know Baltimore had the week off, but they played well down the stretch in the regular season to finish the season out. So this one's it's going to be a tough one. I thought the line is a little high here at 9.5 for Houston.
Oh yeah. So
it feels like Baltimore's got a lot of hype right now.
Sure. And I don't know if that's what's driving it, or if just in Vegas, the bets are so hard on Baltimore that everybody, it's driven the line up so hard to try and get bets onto Houston. Sometimes that happens, but this line has stayed consistent all week at 9.5. And I don't know why, especially after seeing last week's performance by the Texans. You have to believe these guys are legitimate on offense, especially on defense. They can do it too. Very similar to Baltimore in my mind. Now, Baltimore is the more experienced, better team. Sure, they're playing at home. They should be the favorite. But 10 points? I mean, when have they been the favorite by 10 points all season, really? Not many times. And to have that in a playoff game against a team that has just proven that they have the energy and ability to get it done, that is a little bit ridiculous to me. I love the Texans with the points here. I think that plus 9.5 is way too many
high,
points.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, a couple of reasons for that. Okay, rookie quarterback and CJ Stroud going to Baltimore
on the road,
has the MVP quarterback, right? That really inflates things if you're just looking at it at a shallow level. But really, you look at this is going to be a defensive matchup, in my opinion, right? Both these defenses playing at a high level. Really, the strength of the Texans has been the defense. I know Stroud's been making plays, but the defense has been unbelievable, and they were unbelievable in the wild card game. So, I mean, the 9.5 just seems like it's well, to me, it seems like it's like they're not doing the full research there or something.
I would tend to disagree on the defensive game. I think this is going to be a scoring game, right? By the end of it, it's going to be 31-28 or something like that. And I think that the Texans do have a shot to win this game, which is why the 9.5 just seems ridiculous to me, because if it comes down to that, it's going to be at the end of the game, do the Texans have the ball with an opportunity to score and go ahead? And they've got nothing to lose. They've got no pressure on them. This is their first time here. They're going to be playing full energized all the way, whereas Baltimore has the expectation and is playing with the expectation and knows that they need to get it done. They're coming in as the 1 seed. They don't want to get embarrassed at home, but you cannot underestimate this Houston Texans team. Nico Collins has been on fire. We've seen it. Devin Singletary get things done with the run game. The Baltimore defense is very similar, I agree, to the Texans defense. They're both strong. They can make big plays. They can get points, right? But takeaways, but they're also vulnerable. So that's where I think that this is going to be a score for score type game. Not ridiculous, but 31-28 is a high scoring game. And, we'll see. Ultimately, my pick is for, again, I love the Texans, Eric. I've been on them all year.
Yeah,
I'm the guy who says the Texans. I think it's disrespectful that they're plus 9.5, but I have to think Baltimore is going to hold on at home and win by 3 points and advance. But the Texans put on a good show in this game, to say the least.
Yeah, and I think the Baltimore linebackers are going to give Stroud a lot of headaches, right? But they just made Cleveland's secondary look silly, and I thought that secondary was going to give him problems as well.
Defense in the NFL, yeah.
But yeah, the Baltimore linebacker is definitely the best in the league. Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith. I mean, that's a lot to deal with. So if they stop the run, force the rookie quarterback to throw, that seems to be where I would, game plan around if I'm Baltimore and try to confuse him. But I'm not sure how Baltimore's corners have been playing. I haven't really looked at that too much, but that's where the matchup is. It's Nico Collins versus the cornerbacks. And I think that's the difference in the game, really, is that matchup. Yeah. Who do you turn to if Nico Collins gets covered? Who do you turn to if you're Houston? Right? It's been the run game a lot.
Yeah, Dalton Schultz is another name.
Jordan, right? Schultz and the tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they do
playmakers.
I think the linebackers give those tight ends some problems here too, but that'll be fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, I think that they'll still be able to get points on the board though.
Okay, so what's your score prediction and what's your final pick here?
Yeah, 31-28. I'm picking the Texans with the points, but Baltimore to win the game.
Okay, I'm going 24-17. Baltimore wins. I would take the Texans with the points. Good season for Houston, right?
Absolutely. For no result. They won a playoff game with a rookie quarterback. Any team would be ecstatic to get that far.
And we'll see how it goes. All right, 8:15 game Saturday night. Green Bay travels to San Francisco. Green Bay plus 9.5 going into San Francisco. This one's a little different for me because Baltimore played great. They seem to be hot going into their bye week. We'll see how they come out of it. We've seen teams kind of fall off the rails after a bye week, but the 49ers are a different story. They got their butts kicked the last few games. They beat the Commanders. Then they get the bye week, and now you have a really hot team coming into San Francisco who's already won one playoff game on the road. So this one's a little different for me. The 9.5 again just seems too high.
Well, I'll tell you what, Green Bay was one of those pretender teams for me, remember? And they found a way to get it done. They did what they had to, exactly what I said, versus Dallas, got a 14-point lead, got the job done, right? They are not going to be able to do that versus San Francisco, right? This is a totally different team. And Green Bay ended up giving up a lot of points and a lot of yards to Dallas in their comeback attempt, right? And San Francisco is a team that you cannot turn your back on them, right? Like they will explode. They've had a week to rest, which I think is great, especially for their star player, Christian McCaffrey, the running back. And, their offense is efficient in the pass game and dominant in the run game. And I think that's going to be ultimately the downfall of Green Bay. The 9.5 still is high. There's no doubt about that. This is a playoff game against a team that's won, just like you said. But at this venture, San Francisco is that much better than Green Bay in my mind. Green Bay playing hot, Jordan Love playing great. Say what you want about their offense, but their defense is where I think the weakness lies, and San Francisco is going to attack that. And we know San Francisco has a pretty good defense of their own that's going to probably keep Green Bay in a little bit more check. I do think Green Bay scores points, but give me San Francisco at home minus 9.5. I think they ultimately come away with it in, dominating fashion and continue to show that they have the stranglehold on the NFC and they're the team to beat.
Yeah, and I think this 49ers team is beatable. They lost to the Rams in Week 18.
True.
They got blown out by the Ravens at home. So I think the Packers defense gives them some problems. Like I would expect to see a lot of like jet sweeps or run plays by Deebo Samuel. That's extremely difficult to guard against, right? I mean, George Kittle, always a good option. He's unstoppable, right? So
they have the weapons. There's no doubt.
And Christian McCaffrey as well. You just keep pounding them, right? I think that gives Green Bay some problems. But I think when we look at the other side of the ball, and like you said, like Jordan Love, he's been playing great, but I just think these receivers for Green Bay are gonna have problems getting off the line, right? They're going to get jammed.
Yeah.
I mean, this 49ers secondary is pretty physical. We got Fred Warner in the middle who causes all kinds of problems. So it comes down to can you establish a run game if you're Green Bay? And I think they can, right? So I think this game's closer than the 9.5. So I would take Green Bay here. I still think San Francisco loses, but I think it's closer than people think. So I'm going to go 21-17.
San Francisco wins? Oh, okay. So they win.
Yeah, Packers with the points.
Okay. I'm going probably more in the ballpark of like 28-13 San Francisco.
All right. That'll be a fun one to watch too. Brock Purdy versus Jordan Love. I mean, can Jordan Love stay hot? That's the big question, right? This is the big stage now. All right, here we go. The surprising Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to Detroit. No one predicted Tampa Bay to make it this far, to win a playoff game.
Dear God, no. Playing. Yeah, no.
Tampa Bay plus 6.5 going into Detroit. How are we feeling about this game?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, everybody's been comparing the stats of the quarterback to Tom Brady, right? Okay.
Oh, boy.
Like, come on. Is Baker Mayfield Tom Brady? No. But Brady won the Super Bowl in a down year for him, right? He did not play well in the end of the season. He did not play well going into the playoffs, but the Bucks found a way to win the games they needed to get to the Super Bowl. That game last week reminded me a lot of that. The Bucks looked terrible in that game, okay? The Eagles made them look better than they really were. They couldn't tackle. They couldn't, Baker missed so many passes in that first half, but they just gave him way too many chances. I don't think the Lions are going to be that bad, although their second half looked very vulnerable against Green Bay or against the Rams, where they
played a good team.
It looked like they could have lost it, right? They almost let it slip through their fingers. Tampa to me is a team that shouldn't be there, but has won and is eerily similar to that team that made the playoff, that won the Super Bowl when I thought they shouldn't have even made the playoffs. So very similar again here. My preseason prediction was that Detroit would only win one playoff game. However, this matchup to me heavily favors the Lions. The Bucks don't belong there. The Lions, I think the Rams would have beaten the Bucks as well. But the Lions, they have much better offensive, much more consistent offense. They can run, they can pass. I think they don't give up those big plays that the Eagles did to Tampa. They're better tacklers than Tampa. Now they'll give up plays and yards, but they can still tackle. And I think ultimately the defense holds them and their offense gets it done. And Baker's mistakes will be capitalized on by Detroit. So I'm picking Detroit to win this by at least a touchdown. So give me Detroit, minus the 6.5. And to win the game, obviously, and win their second playoff game in 32 years. So, yeah, and the tickets for this game, did you see the ticket prices for this game?
I did not.
Minimum ticket price is like $1,100 for this game in Detroit. Wow. Because it's absolutely.
It's their Super Bowl. Yeah, the Pistons are trash.
They've never made it this far.
Red Wings are bad. The Tigers are bad. So, yeah, it's all on the Lions.
Very hard. Yeah.
Tough. A lot of demand. I get it. And it's special, too, right? It's special for the fan base.
Very special.
Got to see it. How often do you get to see a Detroit Lions playoff game?
At home.
I mean?
Yeah.
It's once in a lifetime for them. So you gotta get out there and see it. So I understand that completely. Thoughts on the game? I mean, it's the same story for the Buccaneers. Can't run the football, although I thought they had some success last week.
The Eagles magically let them run the ball, though. Which is
odd. It seems we'll see if that carries over. I don't think it is. I think Detroit's an inspired football team right now. Everyone's playing their hearts out. I don't think Tampa Bay can run the football on them. I just don't see it. So we go through Baker Mayfield, right? Baker Mayfield in 6 games, 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's been playing pretty well, given the situation. Won the playoff game versus the Eagles. I mean, that's, you got great receivers on the Buccaneers. So you can do a lot with that. But when you're on the road in an environment like Detroit, it's hard to communicate. Everyone's hyped up. It's just a lot harder. I think Baker will struggle against this Detroit Lions defense. And again, with Detroit, those 2 running backs are just so difficult to stop, right? David Montgomery will pound you, and he's such a powerful, successful running back, right? So successful with his power. He's going to get 5 yards every play. 5 yards every play. Here we go. It's Gibbs for 10, right?
Yep.
And that
set up
sets
the
up
play action,
and that's just it's just impossible to defend that when they're hot. We've seen them get cold at times, but when that's working, I don't think there's few teams that can stop them, right? When it's actually working, the play action set up and everything's going well. So I think, Detroit's an inspired football team. So I'm taking Detroit in a blowout here. I'm going to think it's 30-10.
There you go. I love it. I think it's a little bit closer than that. I'd probably go, 31-20.
Fair. Yeah, I just think it's going to be a lot harder for Tampa Bay on the road. All right, big game of the week: Kansas City at Buffalo. Yes,
did you see the?
At. Well, I said at.
Did you see the press conference question that for the Tampa game? Somebody actually asked Tampa what they think about the weather in Detroit and how that's going to affect them. They play in a dome.
Yeah. Well, you got to go from the hotel to the bus. I mean, that's challenging. You know what I mean? Got to be outside. You live in Florida. It's tough.
Anyway, getting to the most important game of the weekend.
Yeah. Kansas City at Buffalo. First time we've said that in a playoff game at Kansas City
ever.
At Buffalo. Kansas City plus 2.5 going into Buffalo. We got more snow, right? So that's another issue. They're hiring more shovelers in Buffalo to shovel out the stadium. Again, the Bills are an inspired football team. The crowd's going to be into it. Look, Pat Mahomes can win on the road. I don't think there's any questions there that, he's going to have issues with being on the road in Buffalo, but it's going to be uncomfortable for him all day, right?
Yeah.
We've seen this with Buffalo going to Kansas City. It's hard to communicate. The Bills struggled with it at first. They figured it out. Now they go there in the regular season. They know how to communicate, in that loud environment. But Kansas City hasn't had a lot of experience ever. Pat Mahomes has never been on the road in the playoffs. It's kind of a new experience to some degree. Right?
Twice, right? So one thing is he's only played in Buffalo once. It was during COVID, so no fans. He did not have the fan experience. The other thing is he's never played on the road in a playoff game, which is absolutely ridiculous, but that's what happens when you're the 1 seed all the time and you win games, right? So he's never played on the road, never played in Buffalo, and this is what I've wanted for years. Make them come to us, because if they come to us, he literally, because he has no experience, has no idea what he's getting into. Patrick Mahomes has no idea what it's like to play in Buffalo. Patrick Mahomes has no idea what it's like to be in Buffalo for a playoff game. Bills Mafia is going to affect him in this game. We've seen him. We know his MO, right? Mahomes likes to use the play clock, right? He will call plays. He will watch the defense. He will change the call, and he will communicate that with his guys. And I think he's going to struggle with that in this game, whether it happens later in the game, because early on you're a little more scripted. You just got to go up and do what you drew up or whatever. But when it comes to those, using the clock, trying to change a play or read the defense, I think that's where he's going to struggle and have to adjust. And he's going to be frustrated. We saw him after the first Bills game, right? In his own home, he was crying like a little baby, right? Well, they didn't give me this. They didn't do that. Well, I live here. Well, what are you going to do when you're on the road and it's the fans screaming in your face and you can't even talk to the guy right in front of you? I cannot wait to see that play out, because I think that is the X factor that Pat Mahomes literally cannot prepare for. He's never done it. So I'm looking forward to that impact. And I think it is going to be a big deal. But beyond that is the actual defense and the matchup that Pat Mahomes is facing here, and what the Chiefs offense can do and has been able to do this year, or should I say hasn't been able to do, because they haven't looked as consistent as they have over the last few years, and seem to not have been able to put the pieces as well together this year as in past years when they've lost guys and been able to recover. So it starts and ends with Travis Kelce on offense. And the other guys, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to drop balls. Again, adding to that frustration, I think, and adding to what the Bills do well, which is coverage and breaking up plays and finding a way to take away the ball and tipping passes and all that, on defense. So I think that Patrick Mahomes is in for it. my bold prediction for this game. Everybody's like, oh, this is the 13 seconds all over again and the revenge game, and it's going to be toe-to-toe again, and who's going to win this one? I do not think this is going to be a close game. Pat Mahomes is not going to look like the Pat Mahomes you all know him to be because of the factors we just spoke about. I do not think that this game stays as close as the line says. I think the Bills are going to take advantage of the fact that Kansas City is not the team they used to be on offense. They're not able to just do what they want, even when they're given the opportunity. B, the crowd factor is going to be huge. And C, the Bills are just better this year. The roster is better. The offense is more efficient. The defense is better. So I think that those factors, same like we previewed in the regular season, are going to be why the Chiefs are, they're going to give it their all. They're going to score their points, but it's not going to be a one-score game. It's not going to come down to the last drive of the game. The Bills are going to win it, and they're going to own it from start to finish. Not necessarily, again, blowing them out of the water, but owning it and not letting it be another opportunity for something like a 13 seconds.
Yeah, and I think the storyline with the Chiefs offense and the Bills defense is the defensive line for the Bills, right? You got to get pressure on Pat Mahomes. That's why they took Greg Rousseau in the first round. That's why Von Miller's on the team with a huge contract. That's why you bring in Leonard Floyd, right? It's all for this game.
Hey, don't forget Epinesa.
Pat Mahomes and Epinesa, sure.
He had a great game versus Kansas City. He had that interception, right? He had a great game.
All these guys. I mean, he's a second-round pick, but that's why you draft the guys high, because it comes down to stopping Pat Mahomes, right? In a playoff game, in a playoff environment, especially at home. So that's really we got to pay attention to. You have to get pressure on Pat Mahomes. If they can succeed at that, I think he struggles, right? Because the timing with these receivers will be off, and they can get open. They're fast receivers. Rasheed Rice had a great year. But again, if you can disrupt that timing, I don't think they win 50-50 balls. If the ball's not perfect, they drop them, right? We've seen that. So pay attention to Kelsey, I think, and then you got to get pressure on Mahomes. That's what it's all about. I think if we flip the field, Bills versus the Kansas City defense, the Kansas City defense is real now, right?
They're good.
They're a good
no
team.
Question. They're good.
It's the same story. They got to frustrate Josh Allen, and they do that, right? It's multiple looks. You don't know when they're going to blitz. L'Jarius Sneed, he always takes a receiver out of it because he's good at jamming and disrupting timing off the line. There's a lot to pay attention there, but it comes down to Josh. Just take what they give you. If they blitz, a receiver's open. If they have a spy on you, probably the running back's open or somebody is not being covered, right?
And James Cook also had a big game in their first matchup, right? So that could be the option again.
But that's who can do that better, right? If Pat Mahomes is getting pressure, can he make plays, right? Or if Josh Allen's being confused by the multiple schemes for Kansas City, can he make plays in those scenarios? And we know these quarterbacks can. It's just who makes more, right? And I think the Bills have the advantage because of the balance, because of the two tight ends. They're both very capable tight ends in Kincaid and Knox, right?
Yes.
And that causes Kansas City headaches, right? Because you can't guard both of them and the running quarterback. That's extremely difficult. And you have to worry about James Cook. So, I mean, that'd be the strength. Gabe Davis coming back for this. I think that's another I don't know if that's beneficial, but I know he was looking like he was going to play this week. But that would be a huge factor for the Bills as well. I think the Bills have the advantage because they have more people to turn to on offense.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking about when I say the Bills are going to dominate this game from start to finish and not, crush them, but just control it, maintain, similar to kind of they did with the Steelers. It was comfortable the whole time, but you're always going to be more nervous about Kansas City and their ability because their skill level is certainly higher than the Steelers. But I still think the Bills are more well-balanced. The one other big difference between these two teams when they've played in the past and now is both rely a lot more on the run game and have a lot more consistency out of the run game. The Chiefs have really been more well-balanced. Pacheco's had some big games. They're not afraid to let the other guys get some touches in there too. And the Bills, obviously, with James Cook leading the way, but you've seen big touches out of Ty Johnson and short yardage plays, and obviously Josh Allen doing his run thing. So the run game is really, I think, what could control literally the clock and the ball and keep momentum going for one of these teams, right? If Kansas City's able to get a lead, that's what they're going to do. They're going to say, all right, we're going to balance with this run ball and just let the clock be our friend. The Bills are going to try and do that and score, and then, continue to maintain that balanced offense of pass and run and Josh Allen at the helm and letting him do his thing. So I think that takes away from the high scoring back and forth shootout that we've seen in the past, but it does lead to more balance and more, it's not going to be a huge early lead by any means in my mind. I think it's going to be just a steady growth toward the finish line for the Bills and for both of these teams. Really, they're both going to be trying to build toward that, and obviously whoever's down at the end is going to be shooting it out, and I think that will lead to some differences come the fourth quarter in the end of the game. But again, the Bills being at home, I think, is the biggest advantage of everything we've talked about.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting too. These teams have played each other a lot, right? They played earlier in the season. They know each other really well. It's almost like a division rival, right? It feels that way. So I would watch for, trick plays, things you haven't seen before, right? New things to try to confuse Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen, right? So I think the defense might see some new plays dialed up on both sides of the ball, right? I think that's something to pay attention to as well.
Yeah. And the other big factor in this game, unfortunately, is the injuries, right? Especially for the Bills. Kansas City has dealt with their injuries. I think most of their players are at least limited participants in practice now. I don't think they had a single guy who did not practice. So that's pretty good on their part. They were banged up. They're coming back from it. But the Bills, obviously, in their first playoff game, really got banged up in two positions, especially linebacker and cornerback. So Christian Benford has been banged up. He still has not practiced this week. Terrell Bernard at linebacker luckily avoided a scary injury, but still an ankle, not likely to play in my mind, although McDermott did say there's a chance at least. Gabe Davis still did not practice on Thursday. Not sure of his status coming back into this one. Tyrell Dotson, I think, is a key one, especially with the thin defense right now. He's probably going to be your starting linebacker because he was a limited participant. There was sayings that he could have played last week, but they held him out of caution, which is smart. Going down the line here, I think one of the biggest ones is Taron Johnson, and he's limited in practice, but he's in the concussion protocol. Still not sure if he's going to play. Again, that cornerback position, especially that nickel corner, we've talked about it Tuesday and today. That's going to be key for the Bills. If Taron Johnson can get in the game, that will be a huge advantage. And then, guys like Taylor Rapp and Balin Spector, who have played roles on this team in cases of injury and in spot plays, both still did not practice. So that is, it leaves a lot up for question on this Bills defense and might make it more vulnerable to a Kansas City attack, especially that nickel position. You got to think immediately Kelsey, is going to take advantage of that if that ends up being the case. But Kelsey has not been as productive as in years past, and the Bills do have options there. And if by chance guys get healthy and Benford is able to play and they can move guys around, it'll be pretty good. The other, Rasul Douglas, who was held out, likely to play in this week as well, which I think is an absolute boost for that cornerback tandem. So yeah, there's a lot of injuries. It could be ultimately a factor that helps Kansas City, but I think with at least some of those guys coming back, it keeps Buffalo's momentum moving forward.
Yeah, gonna be a good game, right? What's your score prediction on this one?
I think ultimately the Bills consistently score. I think it's going to be 31-17. I think that'll be the final score. It's, again, not close. It's not a one-score game. Kansas City scores some points, but they're not going to, be down to the wire and both throwing out 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. No, I think.
Yeah, this Kansas City team, both these teams really, they're not the high-flying offenses that they were in previous years, right? I think both teams have really focused on running the football and playing good defense. And that's really been what we've seen, from the Bills too, right? So I think it's a lower scoring game. I'm thinking 27-21. Bills ultimately pull it out. All the pressure's on the Bills, right? You got to get over the hump.
Absolutely.
We're talking coaching legacy. We're talking quarterback legacy. All that stuff's on the line in this game. again, you get the home playoff game like you had last year. You know, there's pressure there to deliver for the fans, right? And the Chiefs have no pressure, right? They've won Super Bowls. You know, I don't think they come in with a ton of pressure on their team, but the Bills have a tremendous amount of pressure on them.
Yes.
I think they play with urgency, and I think they ultimately find a way to win this one.
Get it done. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Right.
There's an outside chance that I may go to this game. 90% I'm probably gonna be home, but I'm still looking to possibly make it there just to be part of that experience, because it should be a fun day.
I mean, around Sean McDermott, though, do we start questioning his ability as a playoff coach after a loss here?
It would certainly be a stain on the reputation for not just Sean McDermott, but the Buffalo Bills, right? Like, I mean, you can't beat Kansas City ever, you know, even in this circumstance where they're much weaker and, you know, you seem to be the hotter team and you're playing at home. We haven't had any of those circumstances, and we've never been the favorite. We've never been the team playing at home, and now you are. So this is something that, I mean, you have to come away with it. You definitely have to get it done.
This feels a lot like Colts in 2007, where you're playing New England.
Peyton Manning,
right. New England beats you every year in the playoffs after the Colts are always the 1 or 2 seed, right?
Yep.
You know, Tom Brady's got his rings, but you can't get over the hump. And 1 year it actually happened.
Yes.
And they won the Super Bowl, right? They actually beat New England in the playoffs, right? So this kind of feels like that, right? Like if you go back and remember, the camera's always on Peyton Manning.
Yep.
And you can tell he's stressed because there's a lot of pressure on the team.
Oh, and it definitely was.
Previously lost every year in the playoffs, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what this is going to be like. All the cameras are on Josh, his reaction. You know, if it's close, they're obviously going to have the cameras on.
Did you see the
same storyline?
Did you see the press conference by Deion Dawkins today at all? I highly recommend
I watched a lot of them. I missed that one.
I highly recommend you watch that one because he brings a very interesting perspective on a lot of things. Obviously, he's a snowman. He has a lot of fun, which is great. But he was asked about Josh Allen's mentality this season and what's different about Josh Allen this season. And he basically said his mental health and his mental mindset are just completely different and totally focused this year compared to years past, especially last year when there was a lot going on, it seems, outside and in his personal life. So I think what Deion Dawkins was basically saying was, you know, whatever was going on with Josh's ex and the drama that happened there, which is reasonable human environment type drama, you know, relationships.
Got to be in the playoffs, though. Come on.
Exactly. And it bled through. You can't get it in your personal life. But now he's focused, more focused than he's ever been. Everything's going clear. And Deion even said, like, you know, whatever's going on with him, his personal life, his family, his girlfriend, whatever it is, he is in the right mindset. He is ready to go. And we've seen that again through week 18 to now. He's been the best version of Josh Allen this season by far. And I think he's going to continue that in this game where he knows that the pressure is on him to get it done. And he cannot be the one to make the mistakes. So, yeah, I think ultimately that's going to be another tick in the Bills' favor.
Yeah, I can't remember that stat, but the Bills are like undefeated when Josh Allen doesn't turn the ball over, right?
Yeah,
and
his postseason stats are insane, even with that bad, you know, game against last year against Cincinnati. Right. So it's playoff Josh, baby.
Yeah, that was their worst playoff game by far for Josh Allen's career, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, it's overtime or it's down to the wire. You know, they don't go away lightly. So if they can play with that mentality and avoid the collapse they had last year, right? You know, I think this is going to be a really fun game. And really, I think the Bills are the better team if they can play with that urgency that we've seen in other playoff games besides Cincinnati. That's where we're at. Baby. All right, let's get it done, right? This is what we all wanted, right? Kansas City at Buffalo, knock them out. This is the opportunity.
We want our Tuesday show to be a hell of a celebration. We'll say that much, right?
Yes,
absolutely.
Well, I mean, you talk about like there's what's been said before, monkey on your back, things like that, right? The Steve Young years, like this is absolutely the monkey on the back for the Bills is the Chiefs.
Yeah, I tweeted it out after the games. I said the NFL script writers got this one right because Kansas City is coming to Buffalo, and Buffalo's got to redeem themselves. And there's no better path to it than getting that monkey off your back. directly.
Right.
It's not like Kansas City lost and you didn't have to play them. No, they're coming, and you got to beat them. To be the man, you got to beat the man. Woo! Ric Flair, baby. Let's do it.
Nice. Love Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it, right? Got to have it. No other way to say it.
Yeah. So come tune in with us on Tuesday. Hopefully celebrate with us on Tuesday. And as always, thanks for kicking it with us.
Have a good night.